So in this lecture, we'll try and package the code that we wrote before into a function, and we'll create a function that can query an API. If you haven't used functions before, you should check out this tutorial, which is a nice introduction. There's also lots of other resources in, for example, the Think Python book and on the web. Why on earth would we want to use a function? Well, there's two use cases. Sometimes we'll want to use the same code repeatedly, or maybe with slight modifications. For example, we might be requesting departures from different BART stations. And then a function will make our code more concise. And as a general rule, if you're copying and pasting code into different parts of your notebook and making slight modifications, you'll probably want to write that as a function. And then related functions can make code more readable by making it modular and packaging discrete elements into something that's easier to read. Okay. So here's the code from the previous lecture that prints departures from 12th Street Station. And this is exactly what we've seen before, and we're getting trains from Antioch, Berryessa, Millbrae, and so on. Now we can turn this into a function simply by indenting the relevant portions of the code and adding a def or define statement at the start. So we're calling this function getArrivalTimes. It has open and close parentheses. These are empty right now because we're not passing any arguments to the function. And then we end it with a colon. And then all this code here is exactly the same as I had above. I'm just indenting it one level because it's inside the function. So if I run this, it doesn't do anything except define the function, it doesn't run it. But if I want to call it, I'm just going to call it using the name that I gave it, getArrivalTimes. And we get exactly the same information as we did before. Now what's the point of this? Well, the advantages are going to become more clear if we generalize. Now this function only returns departure times for 12th Street Station, but what if we want to tell the function we're interested in a different station? So to do this, we need to add an argument. And the argument is going to create a variable that's internal to the function. It's going to disappear once the function executes and terminates. So let's call this argument station. And so this is a temporary variable that's only accessed or only available inside the function. And we're going to insert it into this placeholder here using format. So station is going to go here, and API key is going to go right here. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. And so I'm going to tell this function I want station to be called 12th. And we get exactly the same results. We can get a list of stations using the stations command according to the API documentation here. We just use command as stations and pass our API key. So let's look at some of these stations. We could try and parse this, but we can actually just eyeball it. 16th Street Mission is called 16th, and there's 4-digit codes for every station. So let's try another station. For example, Warm Springs. In our arrival times to Warm Springs, it looks like they're going in one direction to Berryessa, in the other direction to Daly City and to Richmond. So it's the same function, but rather than inserting 12th Street into our API request, this stations command is going to have warm in it, and then warm is inserted into this big long string instead of 12th. Let's run it. Sometimes the API needs to run twice to work. So far, our function only prints the output. Well, what if we wanted to return a data frame rather than printing it, or as well as printing it? So we're going to do this by creating a list of data frames, and then we're going to join them together. So for each element of the list, we also want to add the destination, because here I've printed the destination, but it's not actually a column in the output, in the data frame. And then we're going to use this handy pandas function, pd_concat, to create a single data frame from this list of data frames. Okay, how is this going to work in practice? So it's the same as we had before. We're getting the departure times. The difference here is I'm starting with this empty list called dfList. And then I'm going to loop over the destinations in the same way, but rather than printing them, I'm going to create a data frame with the estimate. I'm going to add a column to this data frame, which is the name of the destination. And then I'm going to add this temporary data frame df to the end of my list. Plus equals concatenates. We could have also done dfList append. This would be exactly the same result. Okay, so once this loop finishes going over, we're going to have a list of data frames. So let's concatenate them using pd_concat, passing this list, and create big df. And then that's what we're going to return at the end of this function. So we can see that rather than a series of data frames and printing each one, we're actually having a long one, and we're actually having the destination added to the end of this. And so I'm going to leave it as an exercise for you to adapt this function to add a column with the origin station too, whether it's Warm Springs or 12th Street or any other station. So the key takeaway here, we'll see functions quite a lot during this course, but they're pretty simple to create, and they help organize your code in a logical way, creating a more modular structure that you can reuse different snippets over the course of your project.